On the planet Somnus, where the gravity is lighter than Earth's, and everything moves with a gentle, floating quality, there exists a vast underground library carved into the living rock of an ancient mountain. The library has been growing for over 3,000 years, with new chambers and tunnels being slowly excavated whenever the collection requires more space. The walls glow with a soft phosphorescent light produced by colonies of luminescent fungi that have been carefully cultivated to provide just enough illumination for reading without being harsh or distracting. In this library works an alien named Whisper of Pages, though most simply call her Whisper. She belongs to a species known as the Dulcarians, beings who are tall and willowy with 6 arms and skin that changes color subtly based on their emotional state. When Whisper is content, which is most of the time, her skin displays gentle swirls of pale blue and soft green, like watercolors bleeding together on wet paper. Her eyes are large and dark, adapted for the dim lighting of the underground library, and her movements are so graceful and quiet that she seems to glide rather than walk. Whisper has worked in this library for 47 years, and in all that time, nothing particularly exciting or dramatic has ever happened. This suits her perfectly, as the Dulcarians are a species that finds great happiness in routine, predictability, and the gentle accumulation of knowledge over long periods of time. Each day in the library follows essentially the same pattern, with small variations that provide just enough novelty to keep things interesting without disrupting the fundamental rhythm of her work. Every morning, Whisper arrives at the library exactly as the artificial dawn begins to brighten the entrance chambers. The library's lighting system mimics the natural day-night cycle of Somnus, even though the facility is located deep underground where no natural sunlight can penetrate. The artificial dawn takes approximately 40 minutes to reach full brightness, giving Whisper plenty of time to transition gradually from the sleepy state in which she arrives to the alert but calm mindset perfect for a day of library work. Whisper's first task each morning is to walk slowly through all the main reading chambers, checking that everything is in order from the previous day. She moves silently through the curved corridors, her soft-soled shoes making no sound against the smooth stone floors. The reading chambers are arranged in a spiral pattern that follows the natural contours of the mountain, each chamber flowing naturally into the next without sharp corners or abrupt transitions. The furniture in each chamber consists of low, cushioned platforms where readers can sit comfortably for hours at a time, and smooth stone tables at just the right height for holding books and writing materials. Everything is made from natural materials, wood, stone, and woven fibers, in colors that harmonize with the soft glow of the fungal lighting. The overall effect is one of organic calm, a space designed to promote quiet contemplation and unhurried learning. In the first reading chamber, Whisper straightens a few cushions that have been left slightly askew and returns a book to its proper position on a table. The book is bound in soft leather and contains poetry written in the flowing script of the Dulcarians. She opens it briefly to the page where a bookmark has been left, reading a few lines about the sound of rain on leaves. The poem is written in the characteristic Dulcarian style, with long flowing sentences that mirror the gentle rhythms of their speech. Moving to the second reading chamber, Whisper finds everything exactly as it should be. This chamber specializes in historical texts, and the books here are older and more fragile than those in other parts of the library. The air in this chamber is kept slightly cooler and drier to preserve the ancient papers and bindings. The air in this chamber is kept slightly cooler and drier to preserve the ancient papers and bindings. Whisper checks the humidity monitoring devices, noting that all readings are within the optimal range for preservation. The third reading chamber contains scientific texts, though the Dulcarian approach to science is quite different from what humans might recognize. Their scientific writings focus on extremely long-term observations of natural phenomena, with some studies spanning hundreds of years and involving multiple generations of researchers. The current books on display include a study of crystal growth patterns that has been ongoing for 2 centuries, and a multi-volume work documenting the gradual changes in the planet's magnetic field over the past 1,000 years. Whisper continues her morning inspection through all 17 reading chambers, each with its own specialized focus and collection. There are chambers devoted to philosophy, art, music, engineering, agriculture, and many other subjects. Each chamber maintains its own subtle character while remaining harmoniously integrated with the library as a whole. The philosophy chamber is Whisper's personal favorite. It contains works by Dulcarian thinkers who have devoted their lives to contemplating questions of existence, meaning, and the nature of consciousness. The philosophical tradition of the Dulcarians emphasizes patience and humility, acknowledging that the most important questions may not have clear answers, and that wisdom comes from thinking deeply about problems over long periods of time rather than seeking quick solutions. After completing her inspection of the reading chambers, Whisper makes her way to the central cataloging chamber, where she will spend most of her working day. This chamber is larger than the others and contains the elaborate filing systems that allow the library's users to locate specific books and information. The cataloging system is both physical and mental, combining tangible index cards and filing cabinets with memory techniques that the librarians use to keep track of the collection's organization. The physical component of the cataloging system consists of thousands of small wooden drawers, each containing handwritten cards that describe the books in a particular section of the library. The cards are made from a paper-like material derived from processed plant fibers, and the writing is done with ink made from natural dyes. Each card contains not only the basic information about a book, title, author, subject, but also detailed notes about its contents, its relationship to other works in the collection, and observations about its physical condition. The mental component of the cataloging system requires the librarians to memorize vast amounts of information about the collection and to maintain this knowledge through daily practice and review. Whisper, like all senior librarians, can locate any book in the collection from memory, and she can also provide detailed recommendations for readers based on their interests and previous reading history. Today, Whisper's primary task is to process a new acquisition, a collection of 53 books donated by a Dulcarian scholar who recently completed a major work on the history of musical instruments. The books cover various aspects of musicology, from the physics of sound production to the cultural significance of different instrumental traditions. Each book must be carefully examined, catalogued, and assigned a location within the library's organizational system. The first book in the collection is a study of wind instruments used in the northern regions of Somnus. Whisper opens it carefully, noting the quality of the binding and the condition of the pages. The book is well preserved, with only minor signs of wear from previous use. She examines the table of contents, reading through the chapter titles to understand the scope and organization of the work. The process of cataloging this single book will take approximately 2 hours. Whisper begins by creating a new index card, writing the book's title in her careful, flowing script. The title translates, roughly, to Songs of the Mountain Wind, a study of northern aerophone traditions, though the Dulcarian language has subtleties that don't translate easily into other tongues. Next, Whisper records the author's name, biographical information, and the date of publication. The author is a musician-scholar named Echo of Valleys, who spent 30 years traveling through the northern regions of Somnus, learning about local musical traditions and documenting the construction and use of various wind instruments.
The book was published just 5 years ago, making it quite recent by Librarian standards, where many of the library's books are decades or centuries old. Whisper then reads through the first few chapters of the book, taking notes about its contents and approach. The author's writing style is descriptive and meditative, focusing not just on the technical aspects of instrument construction, but also on the cultural and spiritual significance of music in Northern Dulcarian society. One chapter describes the ritual use of long, hollow reeds that produce deep, resonant tones during seasonal festivals. As she reads, Whisper occasionally pauses to appreciate particularly beautiful passages. The author has a gift for describing sounds in words, creating prose that almost allows the reader to hear the music being discussed. One passage describes the sound of mountain winds whistling through natural rock formations and how ancient instrument makers learned to recreate these sounds using carved wood and metal. The process of cataloging continues, with Whisper identifying the book's relationship to other works in the collection. The library already contains several books on musical instruments, including a comprehensive survey of stringed instruments and a detailed study of percussion traditions from the southern regions of Somnus. Whisper makes notes about these connections, ensuring that future researchers will be able to find related materials easily. She also evaluates the book's physical condition and conservation needs. The binding is sturdy and should last for many decades with proper care, but a few pages show minor foxing that should be monitored. Whisper makes a note to check these pages again in 6 months to ensure that the discoloration is not spreading. After completing the detailed examination and note-taking, Whisper assigns the book a location within the library's organizational system. The music collection is housed in chambers 7 and 8, with wind instruments specifically located in the northeastern section of chamber 7. Whisper records this location on the index card and in her personal memory system, mentally rehearsing the book's location and contents until they become firmly fixed in her mind. The remaining 52 books in the donated collection will be processed over the next several weeks, with Whisper typically handling 2 or 3 books per day. This pace allows for thorough examination and proper integration into the library's systems without rushing through the important details that make each book unique and valuable. While Whisper works on cataloging, the library receives its usual steady trickle of visitors. The Dulcarians who use the library are much like Whisper herself, quiet, contemplative beings who approach reading and research as forms of meditation, rather than urgent tasks to be completed quickly. They enter the library silently, nod respectfully to Whisper if they pass the cataloging chamber, and settle into the reading chambers for hours or sometimes entire days of unhurried study.
One regular visitor is an elderly philosopher named Depth of Thought, who has been working on the same research project for over 20 years. His project involves comparing different approaches to the concept of time among various Dulcurian philosophical schools, and he typically spends his library visits reading ancient texts and taking extensive handwritten notes. He arrives at the library around mid-morning and usually stays until late afternoon, taking only brief breaks to rest his eyes and stretch his long limbs. Another frequent visitor is a young historian named Careful Observer, who is researching the agricultural practices of early Dulcurian settlements. Her work requires consulting many different types of sources: historical accounts, scientific studies of soil and climate, anthropological observations of farming rituals, and economic records of crop yields. She moves between different reading chambers throughout the day, gathering information from diverse sources and gradually building a comprehensive understanding of her subject.
The library also serves scholars from other regions of Somnus who travel long distances to access its unique collections. These visiting researchers often stay for several weeks or even months, immersing themselves completely in their studies. They are provided with simple accommodations in chambers adjacent to the library, allowing them to maintain their research focus without the distraction of daily travel. As the day progresses, Whisper continues her methodical work on the new book acquisitions. Around midday, she takes a brief break to prepare and consume her daily nourishment. The Dulcurians sustain themselves primarily on a thick, nutritious liquid that is derived from processed grains and enriched with vitamins and minerals. Whisper's midday meal consists of this liquid, flavored with essences of fruits and herbs, served in a simple ceramic cup. The preparation of her meal is itself a meditative process. Whisper heats the base liquid to exactly the right temperature using a heating device powered by the same phosphorescent fungi that light the library. She then adds precisely measured amounts of flavorings, stirring the mixture slowly until it reaches the perfect consistency and taste. Today, she chooses flavors reminiscent of berries and mint, creating a beverage that is both nourishing and refreshing. While consuming her meal, Whisper sits in a small alcove adjacent to the cataloging chamber, looking out through a crystal window that provides a view of the underground garden that supplies air purification for the library. The garden contains hundreds of different plant species, all chosen for their ability to thrive in the dim lighting conditions and their effectiveness at filtering and oxygenating the air. The garden is tended by another library employee, a gentle Dulcurian named Tender of Growth, who has developed an almost supernatural ability to understand what each plant needs. Under their care, the garden has become a miniature ecosystem of extraordinary beauty and perfect balance. Whisper finds watching the garden deeply relaxing, noting the subtle ways that different plants interact with each other and the slow but constant changes that occur as the ecosystem evolves. After her meal break, Whisper returns to her cataloging work, beginning her examination of the second book in the donated collection. This book focuses on the ceremonial uses of music in Dulcurian religious practices, and it contains detailed descriptions of instruments that are considered sacred and are rarely seen outside of religious contexts. The book opens with a chapter on the theoretical foundations of sacred music, explaining how certain sound frequencies are believed to promote spiritual awareness and community harmony. The author, a scholar priest named Harmony of Spheres, writes with the authority of someone who has spent decades participating in religious ceremonies and studying their effects on participants. Whisper reads about instruments made from rare crystalline formations found only in certain mountain caves, instruments that produce tones of extraordinary purity and resonance. These crystal instruments are carved over many years by master craftsmen who consider their work a form of spiritual practice. Each instrument is unique, shaped by the natural characteristics of the crystal from which it is made.
The cataloging process for this book reveals connections to several other works in the collection, including theological texts, studies of crystal formations, and anthropological works on ceremonial practices. Whisper carefully notes these connections, creating a web of cross-references that will help future researchers understand the broader context of their specialized studies. As she works, Whisper occasionally hears the soft sounds of library users moving through the chambers, the whisper of pages being turned, the quiet scraping of a chair being adjusted, the barely audible footsteps of someone walking to a different section. These sounds create a gentle background symphony that many library workers find conducive to concentration. The acoustic properties of the carved stone chambers ensure that sounds don't carry far, allowing many people to work simultaneously without disturbing each other. In the late afternoon, as the library's artificial lighting begins its gradual transition toward evening, Whisper pauses in her cataloging work to assist several library users who have questions about locating specific materials. The first is a young student researching the history of transportation on Somnus who needs to find books about the development of floating vehicles that take advantage of the planet's lower gravity. Whisper guides the student to Chamber 12, which contains technological and engineering texts. She locates several relevant books and explains their contents and organization, helping the student understand how to navigate the specialized terminology used in transportation engineering. The student expresses gratitude for the assistance and settles into a comfortable reading position to begin their research. The second library user needing assistance is researching the cultural significance of color in Dulcarian art and decoration. This is a complex topic that spans multiple disciplines, and Whisper needs to identify relevant materials from the art history collection, the anthropology section, and several specialized studies of Dulcarian psychology and perception. Whisper's extensive knowledge of the library's contents allows her to quickly identify the most useful sources for this research. She locates books on traditional dyeing techniques, studies of color symbolism in religious art, and psychological research on how Dulcarians perceive and respond to different colors. She explains the connections between these diverse sources, helping the researcher understand how to synthesize information from different fields of study. The third person seeking assistance is Depth of Thought, the elderly philosopher who is one of the library's most regular users. He has encountered a reference to an obscure text on temporal philosophy that he believes might be relevant to his research, but he's not certain whether the library contains a copy. The text was written several centuries ago by a philosopher known only as Silent Contemplator, and very few copies are known to exist. Whisper searches through her memory of the collection, cross-referencing the author's name, the approximate publication date, and the subject matter. After several minutes of mental searching, she recalls that the library does indeed contain this text, though it is housed in the special preservation chamber where the most fragile and rare books are kept. She arranges for Depth of Thought to have supervised access to the text, ensuring that it will be handled with the extreme care such ancient materials require. As the day draws toward its close, Whisper completes her work on the second book in the donated collection and begins preparing for the end of her shift. The library never fully closes, as some researchers prefer to work during the quiet evening and night hours, but the daytime staff transitions their responsibilities to a smaller evening crew. Whisper's end-of-day routine involves updating all of her cataloging records, ensuring that the physical index cards match her mental notes, and preparing work materials for the following day. She reviews the progress she has made on processing the donated collection, noting that she is slightly ahead of her planned schedule and should be able to complete the entire collection within the estimated time frame. She also spends a few minutes updating the Master Catalog, a comprehensive record of all additions, changes, and maintenance activities in the library. This record serves not only as an administrative tool, but also as a historical document that tracks the growth and evolution of the collection over time. Future librarians and researchers will be able to use these records to understand how knowledge has accumulated and changed on Somnus over the centuries. Before leaving for the day, Whisper makes one final tour of the reading chambers, checking that all materials are properly organized and that the environmental controls are functioning correctly. She dims the lighting in chambers that are not currently in use, adjusts the humidity controls based on the day's weather conditions outside the mountain, and ensures that all the phosphorescent fungi are healthy and producing appropriate levels of illumination. In Chamber 15, she encounters a researcher who has fallen asleep while reading, their head resting peacefully on their arms on the table. This is not uncommon in the library, as the calm atmosphere and comfortable furniture often induce a state of deep relaxation in visitors who have been working intensively. Whisper gently covers the sleeping researcher with a soft blanket kept in the chamber for this purpose and adjusts the lighting to a dimmer setting that will be more comfortable if they wake during the night.
Whisper's home is a short distance from the library, accessible through a series of tunnels carved into the same mountain system. The tunnels are lit by the same type of phosphorescent fungi used in the library, creating a continuous environment of soft, natural light. The walk home takes about 15 minutes at the gentle pace Whisper prefers, providing a pleasant transition between the focused attention of work and the relaxed atmosphere of her personal time. Her dwelling is carved directly from the living rock, with smooth, curved walls that follow the natural contours of the stone. The furniture is built into the walls and floors, creating an integrated living space that feels more grown than constructed. Soft fabrics and cushions in various shades of blue and green provide comfort and visual warmth, while carefully placed crystals create subtle lighting effects throughout the space. Whisper's evening routine begins with preparing her main meal of the day, a more elaborate version of the liquid nourishment she consumed at the library. The evening preparation involves blending multiple flavors and nutrients to create a beverage that is both satisfying and conducive to peaceful sleep. Tonight she chooses essences of flowers and herbs known for their calming properties, creating a drink that tastes like a meadow at twilight. While her meal warms to the optimal temperature, Whisper tends to her personal collection of books. Unlike the scholarly works in the library, her private collection consists mainly of poetry, philosophical meditations, and artistic works that she reads for personal pleasure rather than professional purposes. The books are arranged in a small alcove where she can easily reach them from her favorite reading chair. Tonight, she selects a volume of contemporary poetry by a writer named Gentle Breeze at Dawn, whose work explores themes of solitude, natural beauty, and the search for inner peace. The poems are written in short, flowing verses that mirror the rhythm of quiet breathing, and reading them induces a state of calm contemplation that perfectly complements the end of a day spent in the peaceful environment of the library. As she reads, Whisper occasionally pauses to appreciate particularly beautiful passages, sometimes rereading lines that capture a feeling or image with exceptional clarity. The poetry describes familiar experiences, watching clouds change shape, listening to the sound of underground streams, feeling the subtle warmth of phosphorescent light, but presents them with a freshness and depth that makes them seem newly discovered.
One poem describes the experience of reading in a quiet library, capturing the sense of communion with countless other minds across time that comes from engaging with written knowledge. Another explores the satisfaction of organizing and cataloging information, presenting the librarian's work as a form of artistic creation that brings order and accessibility to human understanding. After finishing several poems, Whisper sets the book aside and spends some time in quiet meditation, reflecting on the day's experiences and preparing her mind for sleep. She sits comfortably in her reading chair, hands folded in her lap, breathing slowly and steadily while allowing her thoughts to settle and clarify. During this meditation period, Whisper reviews the books she cataloged during the day, not in an analytical way, but simply allowing the memories to flow through her consciousness. She recalls the description of mountain wind instruments, the discussion of sacred crystal formations, and the various interactions she had with library users. Each memory is acknowledged gently and then released, creating space for the peaceful emptiness that precedes restful sleep. The meditation concludes with Whisper expressing gratitude for the day's experiences, the satisfaction of productive work, the beauty of the knowledge she encountered, the pleasure of helping others with their research, and the general contentment that comes from living in harmony with her natural inclinations and abilities. Finally, as the library's artificial night reaches its deepest phase, Whisper prepares for sleep. Her sleeping chamber is the most peaceful room in her dwelling, with walls that can shift to display slowly changing patterns of soft color and light. Tonight she chooses a pattern that resembles gentle waves of blue and green light flowing across the surfaces, creating an environment that promotes deep, restorative sleep. The sleeping platform adjusts automatically to support her body in the most comfortable position,
while the room's atmosphere gradually shifts to optimal temperature and humidity for Dulcarian sleep. Soft, barely audible sounds reminiscent of distant streams and gentle breezes provide a peaceful background that masks any potentially disturbing noises from outside. As sleep approaches, Whisper feels the deep satisfaction that comes from a day well lived in service of knowledge and learning. Tomorrow will bring more books to catalog, more researchers to assist, and more opportunities to contribute to the vast, patient accumulation of understanding that defines Dulcarian civilization. The prospect fills her with quiet anticipation rather than anxiety, knowing that each day in the library offers the chance to discover new ideas and to help others in their own journeys of learning. In her dreams, Whisper often finds herself walking through infinite libraries, each one filled with books containing knowledge beyond imagination. The dream libraries are even more beautiful and peaceful than the real one where she works, with crystalline walls that sing softly when touched, and books that glow with inner light. In these dreams, she can absorb the contents of entire books simply by touching them, experiencing centuries of accumulated wisdom in moments of perfect understanding. But even in dreams, Whisper's favorite activity remains the same as in waking life: the quiet, methodical work of cataloging and organizing knowledge, ensuring that the vast treasures of learning remain accessible to all who seek them. Whether in the real library carved into the mountain of Somnus, or in the infinite dream libraries of her sleeping mind, she continues her gentle, essential work of preserving and sharing the accumulated wisdom of her peaceful, thoughtful species. And so, another day ends for Whisper of Pages, the quiet alien librarian whose life is dedicated to the unhurried pursuit of knowledge and the patient cultivation of understanding. On the peaceful planet Somnus, where time moves slowly and wisdom is valued above all other achievements, her work continues day after day, contributing to the vast, gentle project of learning that has sustained her civilization for thousands of years.